The Battle of Kadesh, fought in 1274 BCE, was a monumental clash between two ancient superpowers, Egypt and the Hittites. It was one of the largest chariot battles ever recorded and marked a key moment in the struggle for dominance over the Levant, a vital region that both empires desired for its strategic trade routes and fertile lands. The stakes were high. For Ramses II, this battle was more than just a military campaign. It was a chance to solidify Egypt's power and to leave a lasting legacy as a great warrior pharaoh. On the other side, King Muwatalli II of the Hittites aimed to defend his empire's stronghold and halt Egypt's expansion northward. The Levant had long been a point of contention between the Egyptians and Hittites, with Kadesh, a fortified city located near the Orontes River, serving as a critical stronghold for the Hittite Empire. Control of this city would give either empire significant leverage over the region. Ramses II, in the 5th year of his reign, set out to capture Kadesh and secure Egypt's dominance in the area. His army, numbering around 20,000 men, was one of the most powerful forces of the time. It was divided into 4 main divisions, named after the gods Amun, Ra, Ptah, and Seth. These divisions consisted of foot soldiers and charioteers, and the Egyptian chariots were renowned for their speed and agility on the battlefield. Meanwhile, King Muwatalli II, aware of Ramses' ambitions, had mobilized his own forces to defend Kadesh. The Hittite army was even larger, boasting approximately 40,000 troops, including a formidable contingent of heavy chariots. The Hittite chariots were different from the Egyptian ones. They were heavier, designed to carry 3 men, one to drive, one to fight with a spear, and another to provide defense with a shield. Muwatalli knew that if he could lure the Egyptians into a trap, his chariots would play a decisive role in overwhelming the enemy. As Ramses and his army marched towards Kadesh, they were fed false intelligence by Hittite spies. These spies told Ramses that the Hittite forces were far away, giving him a false sense of security. Believing that the Hittite army was still distant, Ramses made a crucial mistake by sending the Amun division ahead to secure the city, while his other divisions lagged behind. This decision would later prove disastrous. Unbeknownst to Ramses, the Hittites were lying in wait near Kadesh. They had concealed their forces just beyond the city, ready to ambush the Egyptians. As the Amun division advanced toward Kadesh, they were completely unaware of the danger that lay ahead. When the Hittites launched their surprise attack, the Egyptian forces were caught off guard. Thousands of Hittite chariots charged into the Egyptian lines, causing chaos and confusion among Ramses' troops. The initial Hittite assault was devastating. The Amun division, which had been isolated from the rest of the army, was quickly overwhelmed. The Egyptian soldiers, unprepared for such a sudden and powerful attack, were thrown into disarray. Many of them fled the battlefield, leaving Ramses with only a small group of loyal soldiers. At this moment, the battle seemed lost, and the Egyptian forces were on the verge of complete defeat. However, despite the dire situation, Ramses did not retreat. In fact, this is where his personal bravery and leadership would shine. Surrounded by enemy forces, Ramses took command of the situation. According to Egyptian records, he rallied his remaining troops and personally led a counterattack, fighting off the Hittite chariots with his own chariot. While these accounts are likely exaggerated, it's clear that Ramses' courage helped prevent a total Egyptian collapse during these critical moments. At the same time, Ramses desperately awaited reinforcements. The Ra division, which was trailing behind the Amun division, was hurrying to the battlefield, but the Egyptian army was still scattered and uncoordinated. The battle hung in the balance, and Ramses had to hold the line with the few men he had left until the rest of his forces could regroup. The first phase of the Battle of Kadesh, marked by this sudden ambush and Ramses' bold response, set the stage for one of the most intense and unpredictable military engagements of the ancient world. The situation remained tense, with the outcome far from certain as the Egyptians struggled to maintain their foothold against the powerful Hittite onslaught. As the first wave of the battle unfolded, Ramses II found himself in an increasingly desperate situation. The Hittite ambush had caught his army off guard, and the Amun division was in disarray, struggling to regroup. Despite this, Ramses refused to give up. His reputation as a fearless leader was on the line, and he knew that Egypt's future could hinge on the outcome of this battle. Standing his ground, Ramses took personal control of the situation, urging his soldiers to stand firm in the face of the overwhelming Hittite onslaught. At the same time, the Ra division, one of the remaining 3 Egyptian divisions, was rushing to reinforce Ramses' position. But with the Ammonius division scattered and the Egyptian army struggling to coordinate, the situation remained precarious. The Hittites, under King Muwatalli II, continued to press their advantage, sending waves of heavy chariots crashing into the Egyptian ranks. The Hittite chariots, each carrying 3 men, were more powerful than the lighter Egyptian ones. They were designed for heavy combat, and their sheer force created chaos among the Egyptian troops. However, Ramses II did not falter. According to Egyptian inscriptions, Ramses fought with unmatched bravery, charging into battle atop his chariot. While these records, etched onto temple walls in Egypt, are likely exaggerated to glorify the pharaoh's heroics, there is no doubt that Ramses played a crucial role in rallying his men. Surrounded by the enemy, Ramses managed to hold his position, repelling attack after attack with the help of his loyal bodyguards. His determination inspired those around him, and little by little, the Egyptians began to regroup. By this time, Ramses' calls for reinforcements had been answered. The Ra division arrived on the battlefield, and with their support, the Egyptians were able to mount a more organized counterattack. Ramses, now bolstered by fresh troops, began to push back against the Hittites. However, the battlefield remained a chaotic and bloody place. Chariots from both sides clashed in violent skirmishes, and soldiers fought in the thick of the fray with swords and spears. The noise of battle, the clanging of metal, the shouts of soldiers, and the pounding of chariot wheels must have been deafening. The tide of the battle began to turn as more Egyptian divisions arrived. The Ptah and Seth divisions, which had been trailing behind, finally entered the fray. With his forces nearly at full strength, Ramses launched a full-scale counteroffensive. The Egyptians, now better organized, managed to regain some of the ground they had lost during the initial ambush. Ramses, buoyed by this success, drove his chariot directly into the heart of the Hittite forces. Egyptian records tell of Ramses cutting through the enemy ranks like a force of nature, though these accounts are undoubtedly embellished to present Ramses as an almost divine warrior. On the Hittite side, King Muwatalli II continued to orchestrate his forces from behind the front lines. While his initial ambush had been successful, the Hittites struggled to deliver a final blow. The Egyptian reinforcements and Ramses' fierce leadership prevented the Hittites from securing a decisive victory. The heavy chariots of the Hittites, while powerful, were not as agile as the Egyptian ones. As the battle dragged on, the Hittites began to face logistical challenges. Their chariots required a constant supply of weapons and fresh horses, and as the fighting continued, maintaining these resources became increasingly difficult. Despite the Hittite army's size and strength, they were unable to completely crush the Egyptians. After hours of brutal fighting, both sides were exhausted. The battlefield was littered with the wreckage of chariots and the bodies of fallen soldiers. The scorching sun beat down on the weary troops, and the chaos of the battle began to subside. At this point, it became clear that neither the Egyptians nor the Hittites could claim a decisive victory. The battle had reached a stalemate. While Ramses had managed to hold his ground, he had not succeeded in capturing Kadesh, which remained firmly in Hittite hands. Similarly, Muwatalli had failed to deliver the crushing defeat he had hoped for. The two great empires had fought to a bloody draw, with neither able to fully achieve their objectives. However, both Ramses and Muwatalli recognized that prolonging the conflict would only result in more losses for their respective armies. The cost of continuing the fight was too great, and both leaders began to seek a diplomatic solution. In the aftermath of the battle, Ramses returned to Egypt. Despite the stalemate, he wasted no time in proclaiming the battle a great victory. In true pharaonic fashion, Ramses had the events of the battle immortalized on the walls of temples across Egypt, depicting himself as a heroic figure who had single-handedly turned the tide of battle. These inscriptions show Ramses charging into the midst of the enemy, defeating entire armies by himself. Although these stories are clearly propaganda meant to glorify the pharaoh, they serve to strengthen his image as a warrior king in the eyes of his people. On the Hittite side, Muwatalli II remained in control of Kadesh, but he too recognized the need for peace. The battle had been costly for both empires, and neither could afford to continue the conflict without risking internal instability. As a result, negotiations began between the Egyptians and the Hittites, leading to one of the most significant diplomatic achievements of the ancient world, the Treaty of Kadesh. The Treaty of Kadesh is widely considered to be the first known peace treaty in history. It was a remarkable document, written in both Egyptian hieroglyphs and Akkadian cuneiform, the diplomatic language of the time. The treaty outlined terms of mutual cooperation and defense, ensuring that both empires would work together to maintain peace in the region. It also included provisions for the return of prisoners of war and the establishment of borders between the two empires. This treaty marked the end of decades of conflict between Egypt and the Hittites, ushering in a period of relative stability in the region. While the Battle of Kadesh ended in a military stalemate, its legacy is profound. It demonstrated the limits of even the most powerful armies and highlighted the importance of diplomacy in resolving conflicts. Ramses II's ability to portray the battle as a victory through skillful propaganda ensured that his reputation as a great warrior king endured for generations. Meanwhile, the peace that followed the battle allowed both the Egyptian and Hittite empires to flourish without the constant drain of warfare. In the end, the Battle of Kadesh serves as a reminder that even in ancient times, leaders recognized the futility of endless conflict. The peace treaty that followed the battle stands as a testament to the power of diplomacy and the ability of rival empires to find common ground, even after a bloody and hard-fought confrontation.